Fighting games can be really hard. They are some of the most challenging video games out there that you can get into, and with so many people putting time and effort into trying to get good at multiple of these games, there's always gonna be one phenomenon that, in my opinion, is completely inevitable, and sadly sometimes it can hurt the community and also the public perception of these games as a whole, and that is gatekeeping, because there's always going to be one small group of people that thinks that if you don't fit into a certain category or you have a certain profile as a player, you should not be playing these games whatsoever. But for me, I believe that it is the complete opposite, and that fighting games are for everyone, and that every single person out there that likes video games is only one character and one game away from falling in love with fighting games and playing them forever. So what we are gonna do today is discuss some of the most common arguments that people use to gatekeep other players that are trying to get into fighting games for the first time, and debate if they even make sense in the first place. Like and subscribe if you enjoy fighting content or you wanna support the channel. Thanks a lot for it, and now let's get into it. And I think that the first gatekeeping argument that we need to discuss is the one that relates to the idea of difficulty and progression, and how, fighting games are really hard to get into, so your first or main goal as a new player should be developing skill, getting good at the game, trying to achieve, higher ranks, maybe even going to tournaments in your local scene, competing and winning. And I don't necessarily agree with this idea at all, that progression is the most relevant thing as a new player or to anybody that wants to enjoy a fighting game. And I essentially have three counter arguments against this kind of like first gatekeeping idea. Number one is that who told you that you need to be good at a fighting game to enjoy it? That is not true at all, and a lot of people, I would say, out there that are having the most fun with fighting games as a genre is actually the people that don't care at all about getting good at the games. They just enjoy their favorite characters, they mash their buttons, they have fun, and the session is over. There is no complementary goal related to getting super good, developing skill, and there's no need to prove yourself as a person while you're playing these games. You just enjoy them as your hobby, and that's it. Because if you're somebody that thinks that has to get good at fighting games to actually enjoy them, I would say that you're kind of getting gaslighted by social media and the world online around fighting games. It is not true at all. You can enjoy these games and be really bad at them. It's just that you need to have a franchise that you like, a game that you think is cool, and characters that you love. Now, please don't get me wrong, there can be a lot of enjoyment in learning and getting good at fighting games, especially if you're somebody that really likes to learn new things in life in general. That's me, for example, right? But that is not the only way in which you can engage with fighting games as a video game genre, and you can play them in whatever way you enjoy or like. And if you're bad at them, but you still have a ton of fun when you play them, don't let people online tell you how to play your favorite game or how to enjoy it. Just do it in whatever way suits you as a player. Now, my second counter argument to this idea of gatekeeping fighting games because of a skill progression or difficulty is actually related to having fun, and that's it. Because who told you that you as a player, if you develop a lot of skill and you get really good at a fighting game, you are gonna necessarily have more fun with that game as a title and its gameplay? That is not the case at all. And maybe in multiple different contexts, I would say, people that get really good at competitive online video games actually have less fun the better that they are at the game, because you become super aware of all the problems that the games have related to their gameplay design, to the decision of the devs when it comes to how they want their game to be played. And it becomes really frustrating to see all the problems and issues that a fighting game can have at a competitive level that the people behind the game are not fixing. And at the same time, when you're really bad at a fighting game, I would say it is when you enjoy it the most. Like the first couple of months when a fighting game comes out and you are in that discovery process and everything's new, right? There's novelty everywhere. It is actually some of the most fun experiences that you can have in gaming in general, not only within fighting games. So this idea that if you get better, you're gonna have more fun is not necessarily the case at all. You should get better at these games if that is something that makes you feel happy and it makes you have a fun time, or maybe it's something that you thrive for, right? You really want to follow this idea of developing yourself as a player, and it is a goal that you have personally. That's great, and you should do it if it makes sense for you. But if you just want to get better at a fighting game because you think that you will have more fun, let me tell you, that might be not the case at all, and it could be the complete opposite. And the last counter argument that I wanted to talk about related to this idea of gatekeeping through a skill progression or difficulty is connected to events, tournaments, and competing. Because if you see somebody online that says to you as a newer player that you shouldn't go to tournaments or events because you're bad at the game, you're not going to win, you're not going to get a good placement at the game that you like to play, please do not hear those people out and ignore them. Events, tournaments and competing is not necessarily about winning. That is for the top 1%. It's for the people that are monsters at all of these games and they put their life into becoming the best fighting game players in the world. But if you don't want to do that, you can also enjoy events, and I would say that the events are actually about you, not about the top 1% of the top level players. They are about the community, about getting to meet people that enjoy the same hobby as you, that love the same video games that you do, and actually sharing that love with a big group of people that makes sense for you socially and is gonna make you happy. So when you think about, tournaments, events, competing, think about people. Think about loving the games that you are already having a ton of fun with somebody else and sharing that with a community. Do not think that winning is the main goal of fighting games. And please don't get this message wrong. I'm not saying that competitors and top level players are not important. They do a lot for events and tournaments, and they create iconic moments for us to enjoy and spectate, but don't minimize yourself as a person because you're not at that level. At 10 events, at 10 tournaments, build a community because you deserve that at the same level than somebody that is the best in the world, because everyone needs to have an opportunity to just share the game that they like with other people. And now let's actually talk about the second gatekeeping argument when it comes to pushing people away from fighting games, and it is the one that makes me the most mad, to be completely honest with you. And it relates to this idea that casuals are ruining fighting games because they want casual online game modes, they want a good story mode, they want to create their own character in a fighting game, right? Or maybe even they want to have simple controls with no motion inputs. And there's a lot of, kind of like nuance to this full discussion, but I'm gonna divide it into parts so that it makes, sense to talk about it. So the first idea would be essentially this, push for saying like fighting games are about online play and tournaments. They are about competing. And if you're not doing that, why the hell are you asking the developers and the people behind these titles to spend time and money in stuff that could be better for me as a competitor or as an online rank warrior that wants to grind the game out? Why am I not getting more features, maybe costumes for the characters that I like, instead of you getting updates for casual online game modes or for single player content? And to me, this is absolutely ridiculous because when you think about fighting games as a genre, if you go back, please, to the first game that you ever played, what really got you into that fighting game? Was it because you saw somebody play and thought, I need to compete? I need to get really good at these games and actually play online 24/7? I would say the amount of people that actually experience that is very low or small. And most people just saw a character that they thought was insanely sick, or maybe they saw the graphics of a game or a franchise that they loved that was finally getting a fighting game that was incredibly good looking and cool, and they thought, you know what, I have to play this. It doesn't even matter that I don't know how to play fighting games. This is too cool, and if I let it pass away, I'm losing on the opportunity to play one of the most amazing video games of my life. So to me, it is absolutely ridiculous when somebody says online, fighting games are about rank and about competing in a tournament. They are about playing against somebody else and not about playing against a CPU or with casual game modes online. And to me, it is actually mad funny when people compare fighting games with other competitive online video games, like for example, Dota, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, even something like Marvel Rivals, and they say to you, those games don't have single player necessarily. They just focus on the net play, on playing rank online, and people play against other people and they are so successful. So why do we need fighting game players to have single player content on our titles? And when people say that, they are heavily ignoring the legacy of fighting games as a genre. If you go back to what fighting games have been since the 90s and the early 2000s, a lot of people got into fighting games because of single player content and literally fighting a CPU. They just pick up their favorite franchise because they thought it looked cool, they pick up their favorite character and they did an arcade run and they fought like a secret boss, maybe an Akuma or a Rugal, and thought, this is so cool that I need to play these games forever. And then later they started to play online or maybe competing and stuff like that. And the thing also is that if they were playing against other people in the first place, when they got into fighting games, maybe they were fighting a family member like their brother, sister, their parents, or they were fighting their friends in their living room and nobody knew what they were doing. It is completely different to engage with people that you already know and are close to you and play fighting games with them on a casual setting than playing online. It is not the same experience at all. And then also when you say this idea of League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, Marvel Rivals, those games just focus on playing against other people online and they are super popular, so fuck single player content in fighting games or casual online game modes. Well, do you know how many people, for example, play League of Legends and they only play ARAM, Arena, or normal games and they never engage with rank? It is quite literally millions of people. And the same thing happens with a game like Marvel Rivals. Do you know how many people don't play rank on Rivals and they play normal games, and also the CPU like level events that are related to like zombies or whatever single player content they're making that is co-op in Rivals right now? So even there, people are wrong. The most biggest competitive online video games also have a ton of casual online game modes so that people can engage with the game in whatever way they like, and they are not forced to play constantly against significantly better players or to compete for a prize or in a specific level of performance. So yeah, to be honest, this is kind of like the gatekeeping argument that makes me the most mad, like I said before, because a lot of people, to not say most people, got into fighting games because of the single player content, because of taking them casually, because of engaging, with a fighting game with their family or their close friends, which is completely different from playing online. So if you really want fighting games to shine, to be bigger and better, to have more budget for bigger titles, and actually make them the best products possible, they need to have good single player content and good casual online game modes. And if you're somebody that wants to play fighting games through that, you want to engage with these games through those game modes and that kind of like mindset, do it. Do not let people tell you that you need to play fighting games online 24/7. That is not the case. If you want to enjoy the single player experience and that is what you like, more power to you. Buy the games that have the best features for that and just have fun. And I gotta say, guys, that a lot of the time, those people that play mostly the single player, they play the casual online game modes, maybe that's gonna hook them up into the genre and they're gonna play fighting games forever, and they'll end up trying to develop skill, right, getting better, playing rank, then maybe going into events or tournaments and making fighting games as a genre bigger. So there is an opportunity there for everybody. It's not only about letting people in to play like that and then leave. A lot of the time, that's the opening window or like the door that you need to open so that people actually later engage with what you want to gatekeep, which is playing online 24/7. So do not sleep on the power of single player and casual content. A lot of the time, that is the initial reason why people get into fighting games in the first place. And well, we get to the last, gatekeeping argument of the video, and this one is essentially related to execution, and specifically to features of accessibility, like auto combos, right? Or for example, controls with no motion inputs, like modern controls in Street Fighter 6 and stuff like this. And I see actually a lot of the time people that complain about those features, right? That they say, why do newer players have the advantage of not using motion inputs with modern controls? Or why are auto combos good? Why are they a strong feature in the actual gameplay of a game? And I do believe that this is actually the gatekeeping that has the more nuance, to be completely honest, because execution is a big legacy of fighting games as a genre when you think about them and you go all the way to the 90s. Like motion inputs at the start were a real execution barrier for the context of learning how to play these games. I think that over the years that is not necessarily the case anymore, and obviously you're not gonna win a fight as a beginner only because you know how to do motion inputs. Like that's just not the case whatsoever. And in reality, what matters the most is your decision making, right? How you engage with the other player. And the mind games, even at a lower level, can be absolutely crazy when people don't have that much kind of like execution prowess when it comes to playing these games. But again, I do think that this is the point that has the more nuance. It deserves kind of like even its own video or discussion that I might do in the future. But I just want to say for this point in particular that I don't agree with the idea that having accessibility features, like for example, auto combos or modern controls that don't use motion inputs, is necessarily a problem by itself. I don't believe that those things are bad by design, or just because of the case that they exist on a game. I actually think that they can be very positive if you use them right. I think that the real problem with this kind of stuff and with the barrier of execution in fighting games is actually kind of like leaving the legacy behind and putting it to the side. And when developers say, you know what, our games, for example, is not even going to have an option with motion inputs, or the strongest option, and this is obviously the more controversial thing, like the strongest option to make a combo is the auto combo. And if you make your own combos and stuff like that, maybe it is actually not that different from using the regular automatic combos. They do say the same damage, right? They use a similar amount of resources, and it's easier for you just mash it and that's it. I think that that's when the problem really emerges, and I don't know if it is actually real that many games have had, stuff like that. For example, the auto combos in Dragon Ball FighterZ were always really good, and I think that one of the biggest problems with it were not necessarily the combo that it give you, but how a lot of the time it helped you to have kind of like a free way to play neutral, or also even a free mix-up. I think that that's the real issue, when those options become really good in comparison to actually piloting the game. That's the problem to me. But in itself, the idea of, no motion input controls or auto combos, if you apply them right to your game, it can be a very positive feature. The problem is not really the presence of those features in the game, but how you actually balance them and use it in the context of your own gameplay. But yeah, like I said before, the idea of execution and this topic has like a lot of nuance in my opinion. It deserves its own like isolated video, and we can make that later. But I don't want to keep yapping about it. I think that you get my main idea, that essentially accessibility features like auto combos and modern or non-motion input controls are not bad by definition. It depends on how you decide them and how you apply them into your game, and they can actually be very positive for newer players. So let me know what you think about all of this discussion. What is your take on all this debate and this concept of like, gatekeeping people from getting into fighting games? I really think that this genre of video games is for everybody, and that every single person out there that has even the most remote interest in video games in general is only one game or one character away from getting into fighting games. Because when you get your dream fighting game, the fighting game that you wanted and you didn't even know that you needed it, it's just enough to get into the genre and fall, into the love for it eternally. I really, really believe that, and I think that these games are for everyone. It's just that you need that one title to fall into, the abyss of fighting games. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel or you enjoy content about fighting games, and see you on the next one. Take care.